In Port Coquitlam, 27 kilometers east of Vancouver, there stood a farm that would later enter infamy by becoming the largest crime scene in Canadian history. But this story does not begin with that farm. It begins with the women whose lives mattered long before anyone spoke the killer's name. Through the 90s and early 2000s, Vancouver's downtown Eastside was home to a community of women who lived with poverty, addiction, violence, and a social safety net full of holes, each with a life and a story that mattered. Families reported them missing. Friends searched the alleys, shelters, and hotels where they were last seen. Community advocates begged police to take the disappearances seriously. But warnings were dismissed, tips were ignored, and the pattern, obvious to the women who lived there, was not acted upon by the institutions meant to protect them. By the late 1990s, the list of missing women had grown into the dozens. Each name carried a life. Serena Abotsway, who loved teddy bears and Barbies. Mona Lee Wilson, who loved playing with animals at her foster family's Vancouver hobby farm. Marnie Lee Ann Frey, remembered for her love of outdoors camping and fishing. Georgina Faith Papin, a talented traditional dancer and beater. Sarah Jane DeVries, who was a prolific writer. And so many others, whose disappearances were too often met with silence. Families kept pushing, advocates kept shouting. But the disappearances continued. Everything changed on February 6, 2002, when police searching a Port Coquitlam farm for unrelated reasons found belongings linked to the missing women. For the first time, the scale of the tragedy became undeniable. The farm was sealed off, and what followed became the largest forensic investigation in Canadian history. For months, investigators sifted through soil, debris, and the remains of demolished buildings. Conveyor belts, sifters, and heavy machinery were brought in. Families waited for answers that sometimes came and sometimes never did. In 2007, a trial resulted in 6 convictions. 20 additional murder charges were later stayed, not because the women didn't matter, but because the legal system could not impose a harsher sentence than the one already given. For many families, this decision reopened wounds that had barely begun to heal. The aftermath forced a reckoning. A public inquiry exposed systemic failures, racism, sexism, and deep bias against sex workers and drug users. It concluded that the women were not protected because society did not value them equally. This injustice helped spark broader national conversations about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, conversations still ongoing today. In 2024, the man responsible died in prison after an assault by another inmate. But his death did not close the story. The story belongs to the women, the ones who were lost, the one who survived, and the families who fought for them when institutions did not. Their names remain the heart of this tragedy. Their lives, not their deaths, are the legacy that must be remembered.
Lemmetellya.